Hear me out. I think the Mavericks have a good one in Dereck Lively II. In fact, I think it's even better than I thought on draft night. At the time, I looked at it and I said what a lot of people said. Oh, they got themselves a Tyson Chandler type. Good. We need that. Obviously, Dallas fans know all too well how big of an impact a Tyson Chandler can have. But I think that's actually a little bit of a simplistic view of what Dereck Lively actually is and can be. Now, yes, where people look at that is they say, okay, he's an elite level rim protector. He's 7'1" with a long wingspan. In fact, he has a 7'7", maybe 7'8" wingspan. Ridiculous. And he's an elite rim runner. He's not a guy with a polished offensive game, but we'll circle back to that. Dereck Lively was the number 2 rated prospect in his high school class. Depending on which source you look at, he was the top rated prospect. 5-star recruit, goes to Duke, and despite a stacked front court of elite talent, he still plays as a true freshman 20 minutes per game. Now, his numbers aren't going to blow you away, and I think that's the reason everybody had him. Honestly, why he's not a top 10 pick. He goes number 12. Dallas swings that trade with OKC, so he gets taken 12th, but effectively 10th. But it's because if you look at his numbers at Duke, he got like 5.4 points, 5.3 rebounds in 20 minutes per game. And so people are like, well, okay, yeah, he's got the measurables. He's got a 40-inch vertical. He's got great agility and foot speed. He can play in space with most any guard. I'm not going to say all guards, but most any guard. And he's an elite rim protector. You know, he's a guy that can get you 3 blocks a game on a given night. Yeah, he is all those things. And because of that, a lot of people liken him to, especially around Dallas, a Tyson Chandler type, and Tyson's his mentor, so that makes total sense. But they might also liken him to where he considered going, Kentucky, and say he's a Willie Cauley-Stein. That's not as favorable as a review, especially with Dallas fans. But even still, Dereck Lively is more than just a defensive stopper. Yes, you see in Summer League in Vegas his elite communication skills. You saw a single possession against the Warriors where I don't know how many different drives he shut down. The perimeter defense continually breaking down, and with his length, athleticism, speed, and just overall presence, he completely sealed off the lane, kept the penetration from getting to the rim, made it so that the opposing players were like, you know what, I'm going to kick it out, and we're going to try and find something else here. He single-handedly erased 3 different breakdowns from the rest of his team. That is elite stuff. Now, it's Summer League. Take that with a grain of salt. I'm not saying pencil him in as the starter today. What I am saying is the Mavericks' most glaring weakness, which we saw last year, was center. The experiment didn't work with Christian Wood, and Jason Kidd clearly did not have a lot of faith in that position. Amazingly, I don't know that Dereck Lively is going to be the starter night 1. I wouldn't expect it, but I think he absolutely has an immediate role, by which that means your starting position's probably going to be Dwight Powell or Rashawn Holmes. I know there's still talk of a Clint Capella thing that could come together, or possibly even a DeAndre Ayton. We'll see about that. For now, I imagine it's death, taxes, and Dwight Powell starting for you at center. So, with that being the case, you have a real opportunity to bring along Dereck Lively and actually give him a role from day one, because his presence and what he's able to do will resonate. And if you got one guy giving that kind of fire and heart and effort, it will impact other guys. It will get them to try. During the Mavericks' run to the Western Conference Finals, they were an elite defensive team by the time they got to the run. Like, they were a good defensive team throughout the season. Never great, but good. I think they were right outside the top 2. You know what? No, they were number 5 defensively, I think. I think it was offensively, they were like in that 9 to 10, 11 range. Even still, they took it to a new level in the postseason. And it was infectious. Even Luka was playing hard defensively. That fell off last year, and a lot of that was because it was demoralizing to watch teams break the perimeter down, get to the basket, and just at will score. Like, at will. You had no shot blocker. You had nothing to intimidate them. And that's why Lively is a perfect pick, because he's a guy who defensively, effort, length, athleticism, can leap out of the building, has a great percentage of offensive rebounds he creates in those respects, another weakness of the Mavericks. All of that is great. But there's more to him than that. It's not just what he can do defensively. It's not just the kind of infectious energy he can bring to the table through his communication and through his basically quarterbacking of the defense. He's able to score. I'm convinced of this. It's not just that, hey, he's an elite rim runner and everything's going to be a putback dunk, or he's got nice touch around the basket as well. An offensive rebound, I think he gets like 2.3 offensive rebounds per game he generates. It's not just that he's gobbling those up and then nice touch dropping it back in around the basket, or thunderous dunk because of his explosiveness. Again, his 40-inch vertical and his 7'7" or 7'8", whatever wingspan. It's not just that. All that is phenomenal. All that's going to make him a favorite of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. More than that, I'm looking at his offensive growth in just the last couple of years. While he was the number 1 or 2 rated prospect in his class, his offensive game was kind of slow developing. It's really only been in the last couple of years he started to develop that way. And at his pro day, he splashed 14 three-pointers in a row. He's a guy who's going to live by those corner threes if he's taking jump shots, which that was a surprise to people, seeing him splashing threes with that kind of effortless, clean, strokey motion. That sounded worse than it meant to. Or he's a guy who can trail defense, like the trailer three. That was a dirty special. The Mavericks, with their recent years, don't really run a lot of transition offense, unfortunately. Again, they're perfectly suited to do it, and now they have the athletes to do it, so I'm hoping that changes this year. But he's a guy who can absolutely trail, and maybe he trails and gets all the way for a slam dunk, Tyson Chandler style, or maybe he stops at the top of the key and pops the three there. But he is capable in that respect. He is a guy who, before college and his league and everything, was able to, I think it was in a 15-game span, made 11 threes. He's a guy who, during his pro day, splashed 14 in a row from the corners. The corner three isn't any different at that level. It's not like the top of the key where you're having to extend your range. So he can be a guy who can hit from the top of the key, or typically the wings. Well, the Mavericks might not historically, in this current era, run a lot of these fast breaks and trailing threes, but they love them some corner spot ups. That is the number one look that they generate. And when they're hitting, like they did in their Western Conference Finals run a couple years ago, they are lethal because they generate those looks at will. Open, clean looks. And that's how you can have a certain game where even like a Davis Bertans is just killing a team, breaking their backs, because it's penetrate, kick to the corner, splash. Penetrate, kick to the corner, splash. It demoralizes a team after a while. It doesn't matter if they're getting dunks on the other end. It doesn't matter if they're throwing it down. You're coming back and you're saying, hey, F you. Not only did I get your points back, I raised you one. That breaks a spirit. That does. And I think that you can have that kind of impact. But Lively's not going to look for his shot. I'm not saying he's a guy that's going to create for himself. You're not going to see a whole lot of low post game, just like Tyson did not have a post-up game. He was a guy that was the dirty work. He was kind of the custodian, if you will, of the team. And I mean that in the most glowing terms possible. I know we literally had the custodian, Brian Cardinal. Don't get on me on that. But you had that guy who just cleaned up everything around the basket and had the athleticism and ferocity that was like the beating heart of the team. Dirk might have been the soul, but Tyson was the heart. He was the one whose fire and passion the team fed off of. I think Lively can have that, and the fact that he looks to Tyson and he sees those similarities and he's saying all the right things, and he's like, dude, I'm not even here trying to be a featured guy. I'm trying to be here to be the starting center and to make my team as good as I can. That he sees it and that he wants the Tyson role says a lot, but the Tyson role in the modern NBA would be really tough to do. everybody is going small ball. Everybody is trying to beat you with 5-out offense. Tyson, even in his prime, would struggle a bit today. Now, he could still be an elite rim protector, but drawn out on the perimeter, imagine Tyson, even in 2011 prime form, having to chase around Curry or having to deal with Dame, having to deal with any of these young, crazy, athletic guards. He would struggle. Not saying he couldn't still be a good player, but I think he would struggle. Lively, I think because of the era he's come up in, I think he's more suited to the mobility, to having to guard these guards in space and deal with them a little bit better. And then on top of that, he's already had to start developing that outside game. He's had to get to at least be capable of a three-point shooter. I'm not saying Lively's taking anyone off the dribble. I'm not saying he's posting people up. But I look at the metrics of what I see him doing. If you look at like his performance as far as his field goals and efficiency and all of that, there aren't a lot of guys that have the kind of capability of him. Like depending on what stats you want to look at, whether you're looking at like rebounding, available rebounding percentages matched with field goal percentage and all of that, you're going to see a very short list. And on that list will include Anthony Davis. I'm not saying that that's what his offensive game is, because I don't think that. I'm saying for a guy who didn't score a lot, he was very efficient. He doesn't really look for his own shot, but he doesn't really need to here. But I think he can develop a little bit of outside game where all he's got to do is spot up. If you need to keep the defense open, draw them out a little bit, expand the paint, create room for Luka a little bit, or Kyrie, you can do that. Because I think Lively will develop that ability to stretch the floor. Now, in Summer League, he didn't look at any of that. Everything was a dunk or a rebound and a putback around the rim. But he's capable. I'm convinced of it, that he is capable, that he can help expand the spacing a little bit to create for his teammates, just to make it a little easier to breathe. Here's what else I'm excited about. He's not limited to just pick and roll. Mavericks can be lethal in pick and roll, especially now with Kyrie. But he's also a guy who understands the nuance. He's a guy who goes to his teammates and say, okay, tell me how you like screens set. I'm not just a body going up there to get in the way. I am going to hit the finer detail to open space for you to operate the way you want. He can be, yes, a rim roller, an elite rim runner, all of that. But he's also a guy who, when you do kick it to him, showed in Summer League, he can make a lot of smart plays. He makes quick, snappy, smart decisions. I'm not going to say he's Jokic out there, big man assist or anything like that. But I do think he can absolutely help make good plays. We even saw that in the Summer League. Very quick decisions. He's not a guy who gets the ball and he's on an island and he's just like, oh, what do I do now? It's like deer in the headlights. No, he's making smart, snappy plays. And that's something that I think, again, is a little bit of a higher ceiling thing than what we got to see a whole lot of with Tyson. Not that Tyson was the deer in the headlights. Don't get me wrong. Again, Tyson's one of my all-time favorite Mavericks. I'm not here trashing Tyson. I'm really not. What I'm saying is I think this kid, yes, he brings you a lot of the Tyson tendencies, and that's a great thing to have, something that we have desperately needed, frankly, since we let Tyson walk either time. But I think there's more to him and what he can bring to his game that translates into the modern NBA in a way that Tyson, if you even got Tyson 2.0 now, would not necessarily translate. That's why I'm so high on Dereck Lively. That's why I was already high on him. I was already stacked. I was like, yes, cool. A very athletic guy, 7'1", long wingspan, great defender, Tyson 2.0. Great, book it. Doesn't matter that he doesn't have much of an offensive game. No. The more I look at Lively, the more intriguing he becomes as a prospect to me. I think Dallas legitimately has two foundational pieces from this one draft class. I think Omax is going to be a fantastic player for Dallas. I think he's going to be a guy who for several years doesn't just give you the Dorian Finney-Smith role. I think he's going to exceed that potentially. But he's a little bit more of a question mark only in the sense that I feel like we need to see more of that. I feel like Lively, even if Lively doesn't develop the offensive game like I think he can, I think his impact defensively is going to hold up. Now, why, as I bump the camera, now why do I think it's okay if Lively is a one-way player essentially and not as much for Omax? I think for Omax, with his position, you really need both. You can't just have one guy who can defend and then one guy who can score or can be a capable shooter. You kind of got to have the whole package if you're a forward in this case. So for Lively, being able to potentially do it all, that's great. But even if he is just Tyson 2.0, mother effer, you are getting Tyson 2.0. That is a huge win. Omax, I think he can be very good. Like I said, I think he can be better than Dorian Finney-Smith as early as year 2. I think he can be better than the best of what you got out of Dorian. And, you talk about a guy that was an unheralded hero a lot of times during that Western Conference Finals run. That was Dorian. And that was a true homegrown guy that he got criticism at times, but he got a lot of credit in the last couple of years he was with the team for how far he had come, and that's great. But I think you have two foundational pieces here, and that is fantastic. And as excited as I am about Omax, I think I might right now, and this is probably recency bias, just as I've been diving even deeper into Lively in the last couple of days, I think I'm even more excited about Lively. Not because I think he's going to be that, 5-out, 3-point killer shooting 38, 40, whatever % from 3 as a rookie. I don't expect that. In fact, his role with the Mavericks doesn't require that. I think that's going to be a skill that you see used sparingly. But the fact that he has that arrow in his quiver, I think is going to suit the offense well, because you only got to hit a handful of those to hold an opponent honest. If you want to keep them honest, you only got to hit a handful. I think he can do that. And then I think once he does that, the entire defensive look the Mavericks get changes. Suddenly the floor is wide open. Luka can walk to the basket, because if they don't collapse down on Luka, you got a guy capable of knocking them down from the corners especially. And you look at then what he can do in rim running, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. That is phenomenal. Dereck Lively II is the real deal. He wasn't just a good pick for the Mavericks where he went. He is exactly characteristically, he is emotionally, defensively, athletically, skill set predispositionally exactly what they need, because even if he doesn't reach his ceiling, his current level makes them a much better defensive team. And that is a win with a chance to be a home run. I'm mixing metaphors, but you get my point. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Dereck Lively II. I know we're all excited about the pick. Let me know, what do you think his ceiling is? Is there another comp that you think I should be using here? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect. And until next time, guys, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Peace.